Hey, everybody, it's Drew Scooter from Sleep With Me Podcast, answering Wednesday Wonder questions about the show. If you have a question about the show, Wednesday Wonder question, the best way to get it answered is to submit it through our website using the contact form. That's what Dan did. This is Dan's second question. You could also ask on the Sleep With Me Plus Discord. You could post your question in the comments too, but it's just with the algorithms of social media. I may never see it. So the best way to get your question answered is just like Dan, who this week asked. We just had a live show. Let me see what Dan's question was. So, hey, Suits, what does a live pre-show routine look like? And how does it differ from your recorded pre-show routine? So we just did a live show with a great partner, Equinox, at the Equinox Hotel in New York. So I have all this fresh in my mind, and I have it all written out here. So I'll kind of run through it. It's a lot different, Dan. And there's a couple different pieces to it. I'm not going to talk about maybe the most hardest part is like promoting the show and try the logistics of the show. This time, the logistics was handled by Equinox, trying to sell tickets and get listeners to come out. That's its whole other that's a whole video itself. Let's just talk about the creative side because it's very different from the show. It takes a lot of different stuff goes into it. And it's also different if it's like, it's been a while since we've done a live show, and it's different if you do a live show where you know the mix is going to be listeners and non-listeners. So you have to take that into account when you're planning. Also, if it's like, the only other time it became like a thing like the podcast where it was like a moving train, so it became like there became a rhythm to it, was when we did monthly live shows locally, and the small crowd that would turn out was mostly repeat people. So that's like a totally different and rare thing. And that was only possible in that little time frame in the past. In 2018, 2019, when we were doing it. So, okay. So what goes into it? First thing, after you have a general idea when it's coming up, and then who's going to be there, or what is the mix looking like, you start to pick what the subject matter is going to be, what the show is going to be like, right? And you know how long, like what's the time of the show, like what's the length. And when you know pretty much everywhere it's not going to be 100% Sleep With Me listeners, that you like, oh, okay, what can I choose? And the listeners that are going to show up are the like a tiny like even a small percentage of people that would support the show directly. I haven't looked at the numbers for New York of like how many times we ask people to come out, but it's like a tiny percentage, right? So this is people are going to be really, you want to have something that's going to be people that are really invested in the show, like the listeners that came out to this show, who I cannot thank enough. And then people that have never heard the podcast before, that could be guests of the listeners, or that could have just, or like this one, I had a general idea because we're working with a partner, right? So, pick the content, right? Then you start writing the content. Normally it's going to be like this show. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, so about 6 weeks out, maybe 6 weeks out, you say, oh, okay, what am I going to do? And then you start to think about it. And then the answer becomes apparent usually. And it's usually something that's a popular style of episode that we've done before. And that ideally now that I did all those local live shows, that's like tested, right? That's been successful with a live audience, which is its own whole nother video, like talking about that, right? Because it's going to be a live audience, even within the listener spectrum, that's going to be sleeping, chilling, or paying very close attention. So you have to choose something that's going to kind of fit all those needs, which is kind of like, it's a hyper version of Sleep With Me, because that happens with Sleep With Me, but it's like a little bit more weighted towards the people going to sleep and falling asleep. Okay, so you pick the show, then you go with what material do we have, and it's kind of like you take everything that you have and then you forget it. So then you plot it out, then you write it out, and that happens over like whatever, 6 weeks to a month out, you start doing that. And again, you do it in chunks. So just like everything else with the podcast. Then you might, or then this is what happened with the show. Then, okay, I'm writing it. Then I'm outlining it. Then I'm writing it again. Then I'm outlining it. Then I'm taking pieces. And then I'm listening to old live shows. I listen to a lot of old live shows, particularly the intros and stuff. And then I'm like, oh, okay. And then you're being additive. Then you do run throughs, and usually like for this live show is a broken up run through. So I do the first 15, second 15, third 15, fourth 15, different days, and then say, oh, okay, well, how did that go? And usually the first ones are not recorded or anything. Then you rewrite, right? Then you're like, oh, okay. And then you do more run throughs and you record it, not for listener consumption, for practice. And then you watch those and you're like, oh, okay. And then again, you keep listening to old live shows because it's like, oh, okay, wait, you said that in there, but you didn't do that in rehearsal. Oh, okay, what was that choice there? So it's just a lot of rewriting, rehearsing, and rewriting. Then you get close to the show and your things start to spike, right? So then you start timing it, and then you are finding out what time you have. And so what happened with the show is like, we wouldn't have a clear knowledge of the time because we had a kind of time, an end time, but we had a looser start time because we didn't know what time like people be showing up and be ready to go. So it's like, ideally we're going to have an hour show, but that also includes a Q&A at the end of 5 to 10 minutes. And it's like, should it be 5-10 minutes? Should it be 10 minutes? And then you start doing timed run throughs. Okay. So we're going to need 50 minutes. Right. And so for this show, the timed run throughs are like the second and last rehearsals. So the first time run through, I was like, whoa, I'm pretty sure we have too much material. Like, so then you start cutting to get down to 50, 45 minutes. Cause it's like, okay, well, what if people are late? Then you're at 45 minutes. Like, okay, so let's start cutting. So this show, I started cutting a lot, which were tangents, and that was fine. So then I started cutting. I cut a lot from the intro and then different tangents for the show. All right, then I did another run through. Now we're at like the next run through you're doing is like, that is like day of and day before. So it's like, then I did a run through and I was like, I cut from like an hour plus show to like, then I was like 35 minutes and I was like, oh, okay. So we're at 35 minutes. Then if we start on time, okay, like I think I can handle that. Like I think I have the stuff we cut from the show. This is like the day of. I'm like, oh, okay, like the last rehearsal, right? Like you're like, oh, okay, now I have like these tangents that I cut from the show that I could return to, and then you're trying to creative constraints. Okay, I think I could do that at the end of the show because I really don't know until the moment, like what is the pacing going to be and what's the environment going to be, right? And then in this particular show, then it's go time. And the nice thing is all the work, really my nerves hit a spike on the days leading up. And then on the day of the show, I tend to be calm because it's like, okay, I know, I'm pretty sure in this case I was wrong, but I was like pretty sure I have an hour and 15 minutes of material for a 45-minute show plus a Q&A, or a 50-minute show plus a Q&A. And I know I'm ready. I know I've done the work. So I tend to be calmer on the day of the show than I was the day before. Is really not easy for me. So whatever, like that's kind of the last rehearsal I'm doing on the day of the show. Then I might be doing, I thought I would have time for one more rehearsal, timed rehearsal, like split up on the afternoon of the last day. But after like doing a little bit of rewriting of what I had and then prepping like the rest of the stuff that had to get prepped, like what am I going to, like ironing clothes and prepping stuff for the audience and then doing a sound check, like checking the layout of the room and everything. And then it's go time. Like, so for the show, it's like the doors were 5:30, 5:15. So like I did a sound check at around 4:30, checked the room. And then like this show was like, it was like an unbelievable opportunity because Equinox was doing this to really make something special and memorable. This was not like, this wasn't like, it wasn't their intention to they were giving, the tickets were $45. I believe the value had to be for New York City, like a high $200-$300 value, because there was mocktails, there's appetizers. This is at the top of this hotel overlooking the Hudson. So it was really unbelievable. Like, so people came in, there was like a couple rooms, coat check, many greeters, and then people were able to ease and kind of socialize if they're comfortable. And I kind of like said hello to everybody and welcomed everybody individually, because it was a small show. I mean, all our shows are small shows. And then we were checking the time, and then it ended up like, as we looked at the time leading up to it, it's like, can we get started? Because there's about a 5-10 minute, warm up time and everybody getting comfortable. And then we're checking the list, and then ended up like the last 30 people on the list. 2 of them were my relatives, one of which I knew wasn't coming. One I was like, okay, maybe they're running behind. And one was a friend, a non-listener friend. So I was like, okay, they probably won't be on time either. So then it's like, okay, let's get started. Then you do like a little thing. Now this particular room was like overlooking the Hudson. It was sunset, and there was yoga mats for each person and like neck rolls. And so we started the show right after sunset. And then Co was just trying to get comfortable. Yeah, you get comfortable. Go ahead and lay down. She got arthritis really bad. So, and then, got it, bud? Let me just put a blanket on her. Okay, let's put your blanket on here. There you go. Okay, so yeah, like about 5:55, I think 5:50. Yeah, 5:55. We're getting ready. We do a little warm up, like welcome everybody, yada yada yada. Because again, you have to always take into account not everybody there is a listener of the podcast. For this show, it was a show where they put all the lights down, but it was floor to ceiling windows, the entire room. So the windows were open, which was a really cool vibe. It was the first show though that I did in the dark for me. And I'm just glad I was really prepared, because what I do, my personal technique is that I have, sorry, checking my work watch. So what I do is I have an outline and a script, right? And that's for almost every live show. And then I can start with the script to get warmed up, because it takes me a while to relax and get warmed up. And then I could switch to the script or the outline. This particular room, by the time like I got through the first things, the room was getting dark. So then, and my computer went dark. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to wing the rest of the show, because I'm prepared. And when the nerves drop away too, it's like, okay, what's the purpose of the show? Why am I here? Right. And that's what I even talk about in the intros of the live shows. Like, why are we all here? Right. To chill out, for me to like barely entertain you and distract you from whatever happened during your day or whatever's going on. And so then, so then we get into it. This particular show was like different because, and you don't know, right? Except when I was doing these controlled live shows, that like, what's the crowd going to be? What jokes are going to land? What jokes aren't? When you can't see the audience, it makes it even more difficult. And then it makes it harder, but it's cool challenge to be like, where do I go on these tangents? Like if you can't quite feel things. Also, this was a non-amplified show, so it was all on voice projection, but it was a small room. So, we did check a check before the audience got there. And then when I started the show, I was like, hey, how's this volume? Because I'm good at projecting. Obviously, like these videos, I'm projecting a lot, pretty loud, probably. So then, you get into the show, the structure of the story, you've rehearsed it, you're going to miss some stuff, and then you're going to add some stuff. And then again, I've done it where it's like, I know my tendency is to keep rewriting, and that's not something that works for the live shows or adding. Like, it's like, no, don't add anything new. Do I try a different position? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Lie down. Okay. Yeah. Try a different position. Oh, you want to go on the deck? Okay. All right. Okay, Co's going on the deck now. So that, I guess that's basically it. Then we went through the show. Then, so I'd cut so much though, and then there's some stuff you miss, right? But it's like, don't add anything like now, because then you tend to, that's when it stalls out. If you're trying to write new material, there's a difference for me between improvising and writing new material. Like with the podcast, I can do that because it can get edited out if it stalls. And I'm like, and I can do that a little bit during a live show. But again, I got to the stuff and then I was hitting things. And then I'm watching the time, always watching the time, just like when I'm recording the podcast. And it was brisk. And then I like added in some of the stuff I cut that I knew I could add in. And then I had more time. So then I was adding in stuff and improvising. But again, it's like interesting doing that when you have you could hear kind of a laugh or whatever. But like the longer the show went on, the darker it got. And the more chill everybody was. And then you do a Q&A at the end, and I have a style of Q&A I do with the live shows to bring people back. And then so we did a couple questions, and then they turned the lights back on. And we did questions at this speaking voice, and then the show wrapped and said goodbye to everybody. And the feedback was good, and hopefully it worked for our partner because they're we both took risks, right? This was only to do this. It wasn't, nobody's it was only for the fun for the audience and to see and to do it. That's the upside. With Sleep With Me live shows, there's not a upside to making it sustainable for the podcast or whatever, economic upside. So it's hey, could this be a special experience for Sleep With Me listeners and any other attendees, right? And and I think it was, and I think it was a really cool thing. I'm glad I did it. I'm really appreciative of the listeners that came out and my friends and family that came out. And then the other people that kind of came out to check the shot because it was cool. And it probably will be, as I said, when I was promoting it, maybe it'd be great if we get to do another one next year with Equinox. But between now and then, I don't foresee us really doing very many live shows again, unless it's a special thing like this with a partner that's going to support it. Cause it's really hard without a partner like that. It's just not, I don't think it's an achievable thing, or at a conferences like the other place. So it was cool. I mean, it was, I really am grateful I said yes. Cause a lot of times, I'll say no to that kind of stuff because it is it's only for promotion of the podcast and the listeners. And it's man, why? So yeah, I mean, it was cool. I'm really happy. And again, it kind of went through offers this whole other challenge. And then, there's the other challenges that are emotional challenges too. So it offers a lot of growth opportunities personally, as well as being a different creative constraint. Each time you do a show, you're oh, okay. This one, I probably could have prepared. I don't know. Cause when I rehearsed, it was running so long. And I was going to prepare one more version, one more chunk, like another 30 to 20-minute chunk. But I had like developed so many tangents. It's different than the podcast where it's like you develop the tangents too. So uh yeah, I got to remember that like I mean, remember doing a version of this and it running fast too, or running short or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so that's it. That's a great question, Dan. Hope that answers it. What time we got here? Well, I got 1 minute. So yeah, that's perfect. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And if you have your questions, put them in on Wednesday Wonder. Thanks, everybody.